Hey now, Grizz here. I just wanted to check in and deliver part 2 of the repairs to this blue Angler Deluxe from the 60s. I tried filming the work I was doing on it, but it's just so really boring to look at, and it's also difficult for me to film, mainly because I'm in a wheelchair. My tripod's set up, and with how close I can get to the desk, it's very hard for me to work around the camera. So, or the phone, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, so what I did is, if you saw part 1, which I hope you did, because otherwise this won't make much sense, I reprofiled broken tip on this clip blade and repaired a bail chip on the main blade. And if you don't know what that is when somebody decided to close the blade with the bail right there. And you'll often find the chips right about there in the blade, and that's exactly where the chip was. Somebody closed it on the bail, and they closed it hard and fast, and it chipped. But I took the chip right out of it. I used a Dremel with a silica grinding wheel and did a very rough job grinding it down, and I'm sure it looked kind of hideous at the end of part 1, but as you can see now, they look much better. The only thing I've done to them is just sanded them. Automotive grade wet dry sandpaper. I started with, in this case, roughly 400 grit, and then worked my way up to, right now, just 1,000. Now I'm going to finish it off by doing a final polish on it. Although, I mean, I could go this to a perfect mirror polish. I tend not to do that on old knives. There's no point in taking an old knife and making it look brand new, in my opinion, because it's just defeats the purpose of having an old knife. So yeah, what I do is I cut the sandpaper into little strips like this, and I just have it stacked up in order, and I just start at the lowest one and flip till and what I do when I cut them like this, since they don't number them all over the place, I actually write the number on the back so I don't forget. But I'll just work my way, you know. This is 240. That's way harsher grit. That's if something's really messed up. That's 150. But usually I start around 320, 400, go up to 600, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000. And then I polish it. Anything above 3,000 is getting to the point where your eyes can't tell. It's kind of like the difference between high definition and 4K TV. What's the difference? Our eyes can't see the difference anyway. It's all really mind games. But, yeah, I'm very happy with how this came out. I have one here. Here's an example of a knife that Victorinox repaired a broken tip on. The tip was broken similar to this, although this blade was worn a little more. And it's got a pretty good shape to it. This one had much more of the tip breaking off. And you can see what they did is they just brought this angle down to meet the tip. And it kind of gives it that funky, stubby look. And I tried to keep this one a little leaner by bringing this spine back a little bit. And if you'll notice, I even swedged it a little bit. Now it just needs to be polished. So that is the adventure of the Blue Angler. For video purpose, I'll consider it done, but it still needs a little detail work done to it. Anyway, that's the end of that. I was going to do these in 2 videos, but why not just keep it going right now? It's only 3 minutes in. Got a couple of cool new knives. Now, if you know, if you've seen my latest videos, you know I've been obsessed with these little gentleman's knives, I guess to call them. Some people call them like lobster knives when they open on both sides. I don't really call these a lobster knife. What I consider a lobster knife is more like this early companion that I just did, that I'm working on right now. The blade had some major chips in it. So, yeah. But, and also the tip was sticking up, proud of the scales. But what I mean by a lobster knife means it has like tools that open like that. catty-cornered to each other. That's what makes a lobster knife to me. These I just call gentleman's knives, even though sometimes they have tools that open like that. But I just don't, the construction's not the same, is my point. Lobster knives have a very specific spring system in them, and these use more of a spring system like a regular officer's knife. So this is my, what is this one? Oh yeah, this is the Swizzarmygrizz. I've shown this one before. This is a very early cool one. Swizzarmygrizz being a famous Germany maker that famously was one of the first companies to actually make a Swiss Army knife. They were the first manufacturer, one of the first manufacturers of the original 1891 Swiss soldier's knife. And speaking of Swizzarmygrizz, here's another one I got. I wasn't quite happy with this one when I got it, but man, that is some beautiful mother of pearl. Look at the luster and the depth to it. It's just fantastic. You got all those pink and green, yellow and purple hues. Just beautiful. It's got that chip missing, but fortunately the front scale is intact. It's missing the tweezers and toothpick. It probably had an ear pick, a little scoop like this guy has. So, in case I haven't told you that before, an ear pick is just a little spoon for digging out earwax out of your nose. No, it's not a snuff spoon. It's not a Coke spoon. Frankly, if you've ever done drugs, that's a very tiny amount. That's a little too little. Wouldn't do the job for me anyway. So we got this Swizzarmygrizz. This, I believe, is an older one. And this is a pattern I see quite frequently. I see this designed by J.A. Henckels. I see it by Kissing Crane. This is a very common early German gentleman knife pattern. I believe this is like a predecessor to this style. This is definitely more refined. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. All carbon steel here. Same stamp, Swizzarmygrizz, Germany. Notice the blade kind of floats back a little higher. That would be straight. That's a little, I don't like when blades do that, but that just happens. That's just, some knives are just like that, either from wear or just from being handmade and being a little off. Got a nice little pair of scissors in there. It amazes me that these springs are still there. I don't think the scissors got a lot of use, but definitely seen some weather. And then next up, we've got this little blade. This is what's interesting about this knife. Usually the little blade opens opposing the main blade. So you got your main blade and your small blade. This one, the little blade, well, it's actually a larger blade. That's a fairly sizable blade for a pen blade. It's comparable to like the blade on the pen blade on like an officer's knife or something. But it gets its whole layer, and that just wastes a whole bunch of space. And to me, that just kills the design for me. I mean, I love that it's got the coined brass liners. It's lovely. Are they brass or are they nickel silver? Yeah, they're nickel silver coined liners. That's cool. I just noticed that. I assumed they were brass. I didn't really look at it that close. But man, we got the little corkscrew right there. And you'll notice something important about these knives. If I wouldn't suggest using these corkscrews, because you put pulling out, especially a modern cork, the tough synthetic corks, you're likely to break mother of pearl handles or even horn handles. And also, if you do choose to use it, you got to keep in mind that unlike this Master Craftsman Small here, which this is a screwdriver, but it does the same thing. Notice they designed leeway so that it can flex this way. Really, if you're opening a cork, you kind of have to use this as a lever on the edge of the bottle. You always want to pull this way, not this way. Even though they give you a little ring too, that's a good way to break a back spring right there. If you pull this way, it's just closing. So you can pull up, get the cork out, even though that's a Phillips, but they work the exact same way. Yeah, we've got a little wide back nail file. Unfortunately, the tip is broken off. But man, look at the line work and file work. The attention to detail is incredible in these old knives. You just don't see it anymore, or if you do, it's ridiculously expensive. But yeah, that's another cool Swizzarmygrizz mother pearl knife. So I got a pair now. Now we've got, wait, what? I'm missing one of my knives here. There it is. Right there. Oh my gosh. All right, so then a couple of weeks ago, I showed off this beauty. This is a Kissing Crane gentleman's knife. I believe this is I would assume this is a much later model, possibly this could be the 80s, 90s even. I mean, it could easily be 60s or 70s, but just based on how elegant the design is, like the way they worked the nail file to be exposed on the outside, kind of like the old Victorinox Alls. You get that super clean look with just a hint of chrome sticking out the edge. Love it. Great action on this. This is a beautiful little knife here, despite, and even a mouse or a rat, something thought so because it chewed at the horn handles there. But next up, I've got a new addition to the Kissing Crane family, and that is this guy right here. Man, what a beauty. No cracks in the mother of pearl at all. She's basically flawless. And this, I'll show you something very interesting with this knife that I thought was fascinating. I mean, first up, we got brass liners, brass pins, got a small fluted 4-turn corkscrew. Great snap there. We've got the much coveted, at least in the Victorinox collector community. I mean, these are pretty common, but the Victorinox ones were pretty poorly executed. So, in my opinion, when I find the German knives, these don't seem to be falling off like they do in the Victorinox knives. But, yeah, carbon steel. You can see the patina in it where it's rusted a little bit. And we've got the obligatory mini scissors. These scissors are cool. They got a little curve to them. Robert Class scissors. I think these ones do it too. Yeah, they just have a little kind of interesting. They're kind of fish shaped. If you see that the whole scissors bend, not just that handle, but the whole scissors have a slight curve to them. Very cool. Next up, we'll check out the main blade. Bam. That's a beauty there. This blade is, I almost guarantee it's unused. It's hair splitting sharp. It doesn't look to have ever been sharp, and it might have been used a few times. I don't know. It's so sharp, and it doesn't look like it was ever sharpened. And yeah, so I find it hard to believe it was used very much. And then we've got this Robert Class Prussia. Now you'll notice this one says Robert Class Solingen. What's the difference? Well, Prussia was a brief empire that existed from, I believe, 1870s till about 1930. Prussia united all the German states under one empire. Then I guess they got absorbed in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and then that ceased to exist after World War One. I believe by 1932, Prussia had been formally dissolved. It doesn't exist anymore. I guess the area is still called Prussia, but there is no government body. There's no state or entity, I believe, known as Prussia. But this is super cool. Now, Robert Class, this is a Kissing Crane knife, as is this one. That's their famous logo. The funny thing is they're actually supposed to be storks, but Kissing Cranes sound better, so they use that. Then here's the interesting part of this knife. This little blade. It's got the full Robert Class, R-Class Prussia stamp on it, but man, they use, unlike the main blade, which saw on barely any use, they use the crap out of this blade, and it's got the typical signs of over sharpening where it starts to taper here, and that's just because of the way people move across a sharpening stone. They tend to end up putting the most pressure at the end, and over the years the blades just get that taper from a bad sharpening technique. But I think it's interesting. Somebody carried this knife and they used the crap out of that little tiny blade. Maybe just sharpening pens, pen quills, who knows. But they seldom saw the need to use this blade. That is super cool. Robert Class is an interesting company. They were founded by a man named Peter Daniel Pauls in the 1700s, and his son married a woman. I think his son married a woman whose name was Class, and that's right. His son married a woman. And they had a child, Robert Class, and he took over the business, and that's why it's known as Robert Class Knives. The thing is, I don't know exactly how to date this one. I mean, it certainly comes before the end of the Prussian state. So that would put it somewhere before the 1930s. I wouldn't be surprised if this is much earlier. Could be as, the early 1900s. Part of the thing is confusing. It's in such great condition, but it looks to be really old. I mean, the corning on them, it was definitely carried. The coining's got that softened look that happens when it, man, great snap on that knife too. And then we might as well look at a couple of other little gents knives. This is my J.E. Dittert. This is another one that moths or mites, something got into eating the horn here. But this is a cool, you can't really see the stamp on this one, but it's like a pyramid with a line down the middle. It says J.E. Dittert & Co. Very cool knife. Now, let's compare this to something more familiar. So, for a while, I kind of got burned out on Victorinox knives, but I've recently started carrying this Master Craftsman Small again, and all of a sudden, I'm absolutely enchanted by it. But this is one that got me kicked off on buying these Mother of Pearl Gents knives. This is, I've showed this before, but we'll do it again. This is a Poldi, but it's not a Poldi, it's a Victorinox. Poldi was a steel manufacturer, an Austrian steel manufacturer. They made steel in Austria and the Czech Republic, and they sold stainless steel to, their stainless steel was one of the famous early, can't recall the brand right now. They had another name for it, not inox. They called it their own thing. It's actually the Spanish word for rust-free, whatever that is. It's not inoxidable. It's not rust-free. It's the Spanish equivalent. I'm not looking it up right now. But anyway, this is very comparable to this kissing crane right here, except it does not have a corkscrew. They're very close in size and construction. Notice the Victorinox is a little pointier, I would think. Slightly longer, only because the ends are less rounded and they extend out farther before rounding off. But we can compare the scissors. Notice these scissors are kind of straightish, but these ones, it's subtle, but the tip, the whole scissor curves down slightly, whereas this one maintains a straight line going all the way out. But very cool. She's got a small blade too, also marked with Poldi. It's an interesting thing about knives back then. They would actually stamp all the blades. Sometimes they'd stamp even other tools. But this has the famous Victorinox wide long back nail file. Very cool. Coined edges. Just a spectacular little knife. These are such cool little knives. I mean, really, for day-to-day use, I mean, I could compare this. This is basically comparable to something like a golfer, one of the older golfers with the long nail file. You've got scissors, corkscrew, a nail file. I mean, this could handle any duties a compact could handle, minus the screwdriver, really. But like, in a day-to-day chores, you can live without a screwdriver most of the time. You just go get a screwdriver if you need one, right? But these are just great little knives. I love pairing this guy with this guy. It's one of my favorite carries right now. If I'm getting dressed up, I might carry this guy. They're just super cool knives, man. I don't know what else to say about them. If you can't appreciate these, then something's wrong with you. The workmanship is just insane. Like these are handmade items. The modern Victorinox has been stamping and making their stuff by machine for a long time. Robert Class supposedly still makes knives, but they're kind of like a Smoky Mountain Knife Works kind of brand, I believe now. I don't know if they're under that umbrella or under Frost or whatever it was, but Robert Class is like a knife brand that owns other brands like Bertram, Hen and Rooster, stuff like that. So the modern ones, I don't think are equivalent to the old ones, but they say they still hand make them, so that's a good thing. And I have seen some beautiful Robert class knives from the last few years. So when you're out there fishing for knives, give a kissing crane a second look, because they are super cool, super well made knives, and they'll give Victorinox a run for the money any day of the week as far as I'm concerned. But you're not going to get this one from me. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Swizzarmygrizz out.